Welcome back to Iacon, everyone. Today we're reviewing War of the Dinobots, aka Dinobots are too stupid. Because in this episode, the Dinobots are too stupid. The story begins with Chip, Spike, and the gang just hanging around the Autobot base, watching a comet as it flies toward Earth, as if they don't have enough problems. Oddly enough, they're less concerned about the impact as they are about the meteor having properties that the Decepticons can harvest. So Prime decides they're going to hang out at the expected impact zone to assess the situation. I mean, it seems to me that would be the last place you want to be if a meteor was headed toward the planet, but who am I to tell them how to live their lives? They make sure to bring the Dinobots since they're big, and they beat the Decepticons pretty good last time around. So they're at the spot, and they take a few steps back from where the impact is going to be, and fortunately it doesn't have the kind of impact that a meteor that size would have. In fact, one might say that it landed incredibly gently. I mean, what is that crater size? 4 meters across? So this meteor seems to be made of mysterious properties, so they want to take a sample of it for studying. So Optimus takes a small sample by carefully peeling off a piece so not to disturb its potentially volatile compounds. I'm just kidding. He takes his gun and blasts the piece off.
There, now let's study it to see if it's safe. Be careful with it for once in your life, Wheeljack.
So they head back to their base, leaving the Dinobots behind to guard the crash site and the remaining meteor. Meanwhile, Megatron is still stewing over the events of SOS Dinobot. He's been watching that episode on repeat because he knows Fire on the Mountain is the next one, and he's not ready to watch that embarrassing defeat yet. Megs wants to find the weakness of the Dinobots to exploit them for his own purposes, so he sends Soundwave to do a brain scan on them. Somehow he knows exactly where they are and begins his scans. Soundwave reads what their brains are thinking, and I have some bad news. There isn't too much to report. So Soundwave reports back to Megatron, who works out their weaknesses based off of that data. Turns out that Sludge is stupid, Slag is stupid, and Grimlock is stupid. Well, since he spent the last few million years working with Starscream, Megatron knows how to exploit stupid. Optimus is so pleased with how the Dinobots have turned out that he has commissioned Wheeljack and Ratchet to make 2 more. He was inspired to do this by the toy line, which has 2 more designs, and plus, that first venture out had some good ratings. Spike and Chip are super eager to help as well, and decide that the new Dinobots should transform into a Stegosaurus and a Pteranodon, because kids really like those kind of dinosaurs, and those toys could sell pretty well. And I think that covers just about everybody from the Land Before Time now, yeah. There's a funny moment where Sparkplug is like, "Whoa, Stego what? And a Tyranno, who's it? You're way too smart, Chip." And Chip is just like, "LOL, okay, boomer." Like we all didn't learn our dinosaurs in grade 1? Or maybe this is just a generational issue. Maybe back in Sparkplug's day, they were just like, "Okay, kids, now we'll learn to unclog a sink. Now put your hard hats on." All the while, Wheeljack has been analyzing the piece of meteor. Man, Wheeljack really has his hands full today. I'm starting to think that they need a third smart guy.
Jeez, Prime, when can we bring Perceptor in here? I need a hand with all this. What the fuck are you talking about?
Wheeljack has worked out that the components of the meteor are extremely volatile and it's going to blow up any second. He doesn't quite have the level of urgency that you might expect, but perhaps he's feeling a little too overworked and doesn't really care if it gets blown to pieces. Fortunately, Trailbreaker is there and does care if he lives or dies, so he envelops the meteor shard in a shield just as it explodes. The explosion from the full meteor could have catastrophic results, so Optimus heads over to save the Dinobots, and I guess I actually just don't know what he plans to do with the meteor, but I do feel he should have brought Trailbreaker with him because that force field seemed to do pretty well earlier. Megatron heads over to meet with the Dinobots, who are ready to squish him like the Terminator at the end of the first movie, but he defeats them with his silver tongue. At least I'm assuming it's silver since the rest of him is. He says that he submits to Grimlock and he doesn't understand why he's following the orders of Optimus Prime since he's so much stronger. And they can't argue with that logic.
Wait, me Grimlock is stronger.
Yes, and more handsome.
Yes, more handsome.
And probably more well endowed.
Me not know what that means.
So it works, and the Dinobots agree to follow Megatron's advice to stand up to Optimus Prime and defeat him. And since the Dinobots can only focus on one thing at a time, the Jets latch onto the meteor and drag it elsewhere without any resistance. Once the new Dinobots are built, which takes a surprisingly short amount of time, it's time to take them out for a field test. A handful of Autobots try to restrain the new Dinobots and are tossed around like Raggedy Ann dolls. For those who don't know, those are dolls that had long limbs and were really flimsy and... never mind. Tossed around like a Michael Bay script. Anyway, it turns out the Dinobots work in that they are big and not easy to defeat. Optimus shows up to the crash site and can't help but notice that the meteor isn't there anymore. He asks where it is, but the Dinobots begin attacking him. He reminds them that they're friends and he doesn't want to fight them, but there's no getting through to them since, they're unbelievably dumb. Despite Optimus's best efforts, he is defeated. But when it comes down to the moment, Grimlock can't bring himself to pull the trigger and he spares Prime's life. But since he doesn't know what else to do with him, he throws him over his shoulder and goes over to where Megatron and his goons are converting the energy from the meteorite into energon cubes.
Back to Iacon will return after these messages. We now return to Back to Iacon.
Starscream thinks that the energon is unstable and likely to blow up because he read a few pages later in the script. Megatron only reads his sides, so he doesn't believe him and calls Starscream a moron. The Dinobots show up with Prime and Megatron demands to know why they didn't kill him. Grimlock simply states that he'll kill Prime when he feels like it. Prime tells Megatron that the meteor is unstable, but guess who doesn't listen? At the Autobot base, they determine that Prime has been captured and that the meteor is going to explode, but they have no way to get there in time to warn about the impending boom boom, except that the new Dinobots can, thanks to their flying ability. Back with the Decepticons, Starscream proves to be right, and the unstable energon cubes explode. Also, the new Dinobots show up and start fighting the original three. This fight goes on for a while. After all, the episode is named War of the Dinobots, and the meteor finally gives up and decides to explode. Grimlock is very close to it, so Prime jumps in and pushes him out of the blast radius, which is actually just a few meters away, so thank Primus for that. And here they were talking about danger on a global level? I don't know. Well, Grimlock clues in that he's been played for a fool and tells Megatron that he's about to get a plasma-charged enema, so Megs and company do a full-scale retreat. The other Autobots show up and Grimlock apologizes to Prime saying that he's been a bad dino and a naughty dino, and they shake hands and everything is cool. And I guess the Dinobots will have to have a team meeting off-screen to work out their differences. War of the Dinobots is significant primarily as it brings two new characters with Swoop and Snarl, who would continue to be through the series and even into the movie. Well, somehow Snarl actually gets the short straw on that one. Sometimes I get annoyed when characters are stupid, but in this case, stupidity is actually a defining trait of the Dinobots, and it's used as part of their story, so it's all in character. The one who's the most stupid and isn't a Dinobot is actually Megatron, who decides to ignore his common sense in his pursuit of power. Even Starscream tries to warn him, and if you're getting outclassed by Starscream, you need to have a long look in the mirror. Unfortunately, this story is undermined by its B-plot with the meteor. It's a nothing burger of a story and really only serves as a means for Megatron to get alone with the Dinobots long enough to convince them to turn on Prime. But it is presented as a great danger, made of such a volatile substance that it could explode at any moment, and the consequences would be disastrous. But what all comes of this? We have a non-threat in the Decepticons mining it for energon because that problem just solves itself by the cubes exploding. No big deal. No one is hurt. And then the meteor explodes and it requires Optimus pushing Grimlock a few meters out of the way and everything is fine and no one is hurt. So why make a big deal about this meteor with unstable energon if there are basically no consequences to it exploding? I thought the final act was going to be them trying to figure out a way to send it back into space before it eradicates all life on Earth or something like that. But no, it just explodes and makes a bit of a crater. Like, what's the point of it all? And the solution is pretty simple. Don't write yourself into a corner where you can only disappoint your audience. You've got only 22 minutes to tell your story, so fine. Then go with the Dinobot story, and then shelve the meteor for another episode. No one made you mix the two of them together, and they both suffer as a result. I would want to see Grimlock turn on Megatron because of Megatron. He convinces him to turn on Prime because Grimlock doesn't want to take orders. To me, it would make more sense that Megatron's downfall would be that he can't help but boss people around and turns Grimlock against him. Like Megatron's hubris is so big that even Grimlock can see right through it. If we eliminate the story of the meteor, then we could focus on the Dinobots story, and so that means that the creation of Swoop and Snarl can be informed by the A-plot and not just something that comes out of nowhere. Like, they take Prime prisoner, so the solution to fight Dinobots is more Dinobots. So, I'm going to give War of the Dinobots 2.5 out of 5. At least the animation is pretty solid, and a lot of detailed close-up shots look pretty good. Grimlock is always a joy to watch on screen, plus the actual Dinobot fight is pretty fun. And if you can't enjoy giant robot dinosaurs trashing each other, what are you even doing in your life?